Is this a great game or what? With the Hall of Famer Tim Quirkjian. I am his son, Jeff Quirkjian. And Dad, a big shout out and a thank you to Dan Batard, who was our guest in yesterday's episode. He is so funny. And your appearances on the Dan Batard show with Stu Gatz are just iconic. So to finally get him on our show was special.
And Jeff, again, his use of the language is absolutely breathtaking. And I'm a writer, and I listen to him speak, and I say to myself, I will never use the words that he uses, and he uses them so beautifully, and he does it in making us laugh almost all of the time. So thank you, Dan.
Yeah, and I mean, he's based out of Miami. He's always getting warm weather, but what has been going on the East, well, across the whole country, honestly, it's been so hot, Dad. Oh my goodness.
Jeff, yesterday I saw a dog chasing a cat and they were both walking. I mean, it was unbelievably hot in Maryland this week. And I went to the Orioles game on Monday night and Tuesday night. And I sat in the stands on Tuesday night and it was oppressive heat. I mean, and you know how cold I am. I never sweat. I mean, I weigh 140 pounds and I had trouble sitting there without sweat dripping from my forehead. And we were sitting in the shade for a night game. It was unbelievable. And at 2:00 in the afternoon, you open up your front door and it's like opening up a trouser press. It's just incredible how hot it is right now. And I'm amazed that baseball players can play through this kind of heat. It's just incredible.
Yeah, yesterday, Dad, was the first time in the pool in our backyard. And I have an 18-foot wide, round, above-ground pool that you can walk in through our deck. And when we bought this house in 2022, we had the pool. And I knew from you and my father-in-law describing it as a money pit, or you saying how it's so much work for so little time. But you always would say, oh, we jump in it 4 times a year. Is it really worth it? And I was like, oh, the pool's the best, growing up. But now that I have one, I have to say, I'm counting, and we've been in it 1 time this year thus far. And we're going to see it by the time I close it Labor Day weekend. How many times will we have been in the pool? Well, because I don't think it's going to be very many.
All right. Well, our pool is worth it because Emma Keenahan and Carson Keenahan, ages 2 and 4, jumped into the pool the other day, which, as far as I can tell, is something that you, age 31, still haven't really done. Jeff, I'm going to say it one more time. You are an amazingly talented kid, and you have a real adventurous side to you. You have gone 1,500 feet in the air, hang gliding. What is that thing called that you and Kelly did that would have scared the life?
Oh, we did the parasailing situation.
Parasailing, right. Jeff, I'm so afraid.
Rode in a U.S. Navy Blue Angel, but I've never dove headfirst into a pool.
Right, Jeff, that's my point. It doesn't follow. Look, I know you're not real good in the water, and neither am I. I'm not very good on land either, but it's still amazing to me that Carson, age 4, has probably done things in a pool that you haven't. And he's wearing floaties. Have you ever considered just wearing floaties when you go in? No?
I got floaties on my daughter, but on my pool, I can touch the bottom the whole time. There's no deep end. So I'm safe in my pool. Dad, I bought this solar cover, so we don't have heat for our pool. We don't have a heater. You do, so that makes your pool more usable whenever you need it.
Interrupt. I'm not sure the heater actually works. And you got to heat it up for like a week to get it up from 71 to 76 degrees. So I'm not sure we're talking about anything. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I don't have a heater at all, so it definitely doesn't work. So my solar cover is something you put on the top of the pool, and it has little like almost bubble wrap looking things, and it's supposed to help heat your pool. So I put it on the day before it got really hot. And when I went in the pool with my daughter the next day, Dad, like the first 6 inches of water, I'm probably exaggerating, 108 degrees. I mean, I felt like I was in a hot tub.
Right.
And I had to go in, and McKinley, my daughter's saying, hot, hot, hot. Because at the bottom of the pool where my toes are, it's cold. But at the top of the pool, it's hot. So we had to kind of mix all the warm water in. I was shocked And granted, it's been very hot and very sunny, but I was shocked how hot the first 6 inches of the pool got.
And as you know, Jeff, running a pool can be very expensive also.
Yes.
But I will tell you that I got a little check in the mail the other day to help out with the expenses. I got a SAG check for my appearance on Brockmire. So it's a royalties check for $8.93. How about that? What a bonus that is when money arrives in the mailbox when you don't know it's coming. As you know, Jeff, I did a Brockmire episode with Hank Azaria and Brian Kenny and Joe Buck, and it was just the dumbest thing ever. And it was so good, and it was so much fun. And it was years ago that we did this. I only did one day, one episode, but I'm still getting paid for it. $8.93.
That's impressive, Dad. Take that to the bank. I'm loving that. And in fact, we had Hank Azaria, who played Brockmire and wrote the show, on last year as one of our guests.
Jeff, do you remember how I botched my only real line in the show? Do you remember that?
Yes. You were asked about Barbara Streisand, and your line was, "I loved her in Yentl," which was a movie she was in.
Right.
But you said,
on the fourth take,
her.
I said, I loved her in lentil, which is a vegetable. It's a legume. I got it all screwed up, and it was so bad that they actually ran it in the show as, like, what an idiot. This guy doesn't know the difference between Yentl and lentil. So, yeah, that was my acting debut, and I'm still getting paid for it. Have you ever, are you in the SAG, Jeff? Screen
I'm a
Actors
SAG
Guild?
member.
Yeah.
I'm a SAG member. Our radio station in Philly, 92.5 XCU, is union.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm a SAG member. So it's like you, me, and Brad Pitt all accessing the same benefits here.
Right. Well,
one of us using them more than anybody else. But Dad, I have one question before we get to the takeaways. Are you doing all right with your shirt here?
Yeah, this is a shirt that I haven't worn in a long time, and I just put it on today because it's very cool, and it really doesn't fit anymore. So I'm sorry.
You have been toying with it. I feel bad
like
for
20
you.
times. It's terrible. I shouldn't have put it on, but it's too late now.
And also, when you cross your arms, it kind of looks like you're in a straitjacket a little bit.
Yeah, it's a beautiful shirt, and it's an expensive shirt. I just haven't worn it in a long time, and I don't seem to fit in it. Again, Jeff, I took my shirt off and talk about joining SAG. My goodness, it looked terrible. So yeah, all right, never mind. All right, Jeff, I went to the Orioles game and I saw Bruce Bochy. Bruce Bochy is one of my favorite people ever. He's a future Hall of Fame manager. He's a manager of the Rangers now. So I got 2 really good days talking to Boch. And I thought in the 40 years I'd known him, I'd asked him every question that I'd ever asked him. So I met his cousin at the game, who was a college quarterback years ago at East Carolina. So I asked Bruce Bochy, now picture what Bruce Bochy looks like, Jeff, okay? So I said, Boch, did you play football growing up? And he looks at me and he goes, no, I was way too small to play football. Bruce Bochy's like 6'5".
He's huge.
He's huge. He's got an 8 1/8 head. I mean, he's got the biggest head in baseball. He's one of the funniest people in the world. He told me my junior year in high school, I was the smallest person on the baseball team. And I was really slow because I've never been able to run. So it's the smallest guy on the team. He said, and I was the guy sitting in the front row with my arms crossed with little black glasses on, and I look like Ernie Douglas. Now, only people my age will understand that Ernie Douglas was the dorky little kid, the youngest son in my 3 sons. But 4 years later, Bruce Bochy had grown, filled out, and was the number 1 choice secondary phase in the Major League Draft. So it just shows you that I thought he was always this big, hulking guy who looks like Herman Munster. Instead, he was the smallest guy on his high school baseball team as a junior with no chance of ever playing professionally. And 4 years later, he was drafted in the first round. Isn't that amazing to you?
Yeah, that is amazing. And I just did a quick Ernie Douglas Google. Dad, I'm not even trying to be funny.
Right.
You
Actually
actually
look
look
like,
like
right.
him.
Not the first person that's ever said I look like
Really?
Ernie Douglas. Yeah. And not a compliment, Jeff.
No, it is there's a couple of cute little school photos of him that look like I remember pictures from when you were younger.
Yes, Jeff, there are a lot of similarities there. Not real happy about that either. But that's the way I was as a kid, and that's kind of the way I am as an adult. So it's not good.
Let's jump into the takeaways, Dad. Let's get into it. What do you got this week for takeaways?
Okay, so Jeff, I tell you every week about a new pitcher that comes to the big leagues. And, last week I was telling you about Jacob Mizorowski, who's just ridiculously good. First 11 innings he pitched in the major leagues, he didn't give up any hits. And he throws 100 miles an hour, just another kid. Well, this week, Chase Burns made his major league debut. He was the number 2 overall pick last year by the Reds, and he came up and made his major league debut on Tuesday night against the Yankees and struck out the first 5 batters he faced, including Aaron Judge. So the Elias looked it up, first pitcher since 1961 expansion era to strike out the first 5 batters he faced in the major leagues. And the first 6 outs he got in the major leagues were strikeouts. So Al Leiter and Wade Davis are the only pitchers to do that since 1961. So it's just another reminder, Jeff, how hard these kids throw and how ready they are for the most part when they get here. I mean, this guy's throwing 98 miles an hour, 22 years old, Wake Forest, just another power arm joining the big leagues. They are everywhere, every day. Ronald Acuna Jr. Tuesday night stole his 200th base of his career. So he and Hank Aaron now are the only players in the history of the Braves franchise with 200 steals and 150 homers. And, Ronald Acuna Jr. is 27 years old, Jeff. He's got maybe 13. He's not going to end up being Hank Aaron, but I told you, Chipper Jones told me that Ronald Acuna Jr. is the most talented player he's ever seen wear a major league uniform. That's how good he is. And since he came up, he misses like almost all of last year with a massive knee injury, most of the first 2 months of this year. And in his first 101 at bats, he's hitting 396 with 9 home runs. It's just remarkable how good that guy is. And then there are the White Sox, who just tied a major league record with their 179th consecutive loss in games in which they trailed entering the 9th inning. The record is tied with the 1908 1910 Dodgers. So and Jeff, we see comebacks every night where they're losing into the 9th, someone gets 2 in the bottom of the 9th, and they win the game. That the White Sox haven't won any of those games in 179 tries. Do you find that hard to believe?
Well, I always give heat, and I've been this person before, so I should be honest. But to people who leave in the 8th inning if their team is down, right? If it's the bottom of the 8th inning and your team didn't score a run, you're going into the top of the 9th and you leave, I think you might miss a walk-off. But now fans in Chicago's South Side are saying, no, statistically speaking, this is not going to happen for us.
Right. Well, that's for sure. And on to the good things. So, Jeff, the A's, they have put a shovel in the ground, the old cliche now, in Las Vegas. So Emily Quirkjian, your wife, is from Las Vegas. Your in-laws live in Las Vegas. Are people, do you think they're getting excited that they've actually started to dig to build a new stadium for the A's in Las Vegas?
You know what's funny, Dad? I lived there for 5 years. And so I moved there actually the first season of the Vegas Golden Knights. And that was, Vegas born. And then I actually worked part-time for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Right.
And then obviously the athletics news has been very exciting. I think there's a contingency of people who are not excited to have another Oakland team in Las Vegas. But I also think that people are going to realize, hey, this is pretty awesome to have a Major League Baseball team in our town. Now, speaking from experience, I was a Vegas local for 5 years. I didn't love going down to Las Vegas Boulevard to the Strip for anything because it's just crowded and crazy. It's like going into DC where we grew up, Dad. It's just not the most fun thing to do. But I think people should be excited because having baseball in your town is a big difference. And this stadium, Dad, is going to be state of the art. I mean, they are building it in a way to make it so that it feels like you're outside while still being inside, which is a huge part of this. I mean, the Aviators, the AAA team that plays in Summerlin, part of Las Vegas, they don't have a domed stadium. So there are games that they're playing in 107, 110 degree heat. It's ridiculous. You can't have a baseball team in Las Vegas, in my opinion, without putting a dome on it. You're just not going to have enough success. So, Dad,
Right.
I'm here for it. But my favorite part of the groundbreaking video, did you see this?
I think I did. What did you see?
They didn't actually break any ground because after being a homeowner in Las Vegas, I can tell you, you are not putting a shovel into that ground.
In the middle of June, right?
Someone is going to tear an ACL or rip out their shoulder or something. So they had like fake dirt. I'm like, where is that dirt? It looked like topsoil or something. But yeah, you are not actually digging into that ground without some serious diamond tipped equipment. It's crazy.
Wow. So, look, the A's should have never left Oakland, Jeff. It's really, really sad that that ever happened. But if it is indeed they are gone, and now it appears officially 100% they are, at least they have a new place to go, and I think that's a good thing. And speaking of which, the Rays need to fix their stadium. They need to get the club sold. I think they're heading in that direction now. But, Jeff, the Rays are really good again. They've won 8 out of 11. As of Wednesday morning, they were one game behind the Yankees in that division. I told you in spring training that Brandon Hyde, then the Orioles manager, looked at us as we were doing a game, and he goes, have you guys seen the Tampa Bay Rays pitching staff? Everyone there throws 98 miles an hour. And now they're starting to score runs. They've scored almost 7 runs a game over the last 11 games. So they are suddenly a very dangerous team in the American League East. So all sorts of good things in the takeaways.
What about our Quirkjians, Dad? Let's go to them now.
Right. Well, Jeff, sorry, it's a strikeout era. You know, I mention strikeouts all the time, not to pick on hitters, because I don't know how anyone puts a ball in play anymore with the pitching that we see. But O'Neill Cruz of the Pirates was the first guy to get to 100 strikeouts this year. He did it in his 70th game. 3 guys last year got to 100 strikeouts in 70 games or fewer. This is last year. Luis Robert, Zach Geloff, and Brent Rooker. So it happens every year now. 70 games or so, that's when people start going over 100 strikeouts. Again, Jeff, there was a time when 100 strikeouts was taboo. Your buddy Lou Brock, who we met that day, Joe Torre told me the story once that Joe had 99 RBIs. This is in the early 70s, and he's going into the final game of the season. And Lou Brock, the leadoff guy on the Cardinals, is not in the lineup. And Joe Torre goes to Lou and says, Lou, why aren't you playing today? I need you on base. I need 100 RBIs. I'm going to get 100 if you're in the game, steal a base, and I'll knock you in. And Lou just kind of mutters and walks away. And then Joe looks at the numbers, and Lou Brock had 99 strikeouts. And he was not going to strike out 100 times, even though he did, by the way, multiple times in his career. But back then, it was taboo. And now, Jeff, as I've told you before, we will have more 100 strikeout hitters this year, because it happens every year, than there were from 1900 to 1960 combined. That's how many 100 strikeout batters we have today compared to the rest of history. This has been going on for close to 40 years, but there used to be a time you didn't strike out 100 times. Babe Ruth never struck out 100 times. And by the way, the record for fewest games to get to 100 strikeouts by a player is 61. So Miguel Sano in 2018 got to 100 strikeouts in 61 games.
That's close to averaging 2 strikeouts a game. That's unbelievable. But, Dad, I think it's worth noting, and a lot of people comment this all the time, and you say it first, the game has changed. The pitchers are throwing harder than they did in 1912, and that doesn't mean that I'm saying Babe Ruth couldn't hit home runs in 2025. All I'm saying is the game has changed, but also the players have changed their style. They're not just trying to get on base anymore. They're trying to hit homers all the time.
Right. Jeff,
Twofold change here.
Jeff, the game has changed since 2012, not just 1912. And again, this is what we see all the time now with this unbelievably violent stuff that the pitchers are throwing, and hitters still mostly in the mindset to hit the ball out of the ballpark. And that's where all the strikeouts come from. And speaking of strikeouts, Jeff, Nick Gonzalez of the Pirates the other night went 5 for 5 in a game in which his team struck out 16 times. So I checked. He is the only player in Major League history in a 9-inning game to go 5 for 5 in a game in which his team struck out 16 times. I mean, teams strike out 16 times all the time, but you think, well, if there are 16 strikeouts, we're facing some really good pitching, and Nick Gonzalez found a way to get 5 for 5 in a game in which his team struck out 16 times. So the guy who followed him in the order, Joey Bart, had 4 strikeouts. So when you look at the box score, there's 5-0-5-2 and like 5-0-0-4. So I checked the last time in a 9-inning game that anyone got 5 hits and the guy after him struck out 4 times. And that was done in, that was done in 2015. D. Gordon had 5 hits in a game for the Marlins. And the guy who followed him in the order, Christian Yelich, had 4 strikeouts.
Yeah, that's just kind of unheard of, too, because imagine how much he must have been stranded on the bases all day just watching these pitches fly by and everybody striking out. 4 strikeouts for the guy after him in the lineup.
Right. It's just the way the game is played today. So the other night, Jeff, I get a text at 11:15, not from Aaron Boone wondering about it's RBIs, right? Not RBI. I get one from Mike Shore, who, of course, is the genius behind The Office and Parks and Rec, and he's working on a new project now that's going to be incredible because everything he touches is incredible. So he sends me a text at 11:15. He's on the West Coast, so he's wide awake watching games, and I'm kind of falling asleep at home, but I'm still up. So he says, hey, the Red Sox just took Walker Buehler out of the game. He wears number 0. He's the pitcher. And he was replaced by number 99, Luis Guerrero. So a 0 was replaced by number 99. And he just wonders, I wonder how many times that has happened. So I don't have an answer to that, but Mike Schur and I went back about 10 different times about the people who wore number 0, Al Oliver, and the people who wore number 99, Aaron Judge, Mitch Williams, Manny Ramirez, all these guys. So we had big fun with that. And then, of course, Mike also texts this to Sarah Langs, who is just a genius when it comes to baseball, a genius. All right. So she immediately reports back that last year with the Dodgers, Jack Flaherty wore number 0 and Joe Kelly, reliever, wore number 99, and they were on the same team. Now, as I went back and checked, though, at no game last year did they pitch in the same game, let alone follow each other. But we had a 0 start the game, and then the second pitcher in the game wore number 99.
Better believe the next one's got to be 1.
Right.
Got to keep the train going.
Exactly. All right. And last thing, Jeff, I was talking to a major league executive the other night, and when he was a young kid, he didn't understand what the hit and run was all about. So he's standing with Frank Robinson in one of these suites upstairs at the ballpark. And he says, like, Mr. Robinson, can you explain? I'm not sure why I got such a kick out of this, but can you explain the hit and run? So Frank Robinson is eating shrimp cocktail. And while he's eating the shrimp cocktail, he is describing what the hit and run is about. So each time he eats the shrimp cocktail, he takes the little tail, which you don't eat, and he puts 4 of them down, and now those are the 4 bases. Then he uses the actual shrimp as a hitter and as a runner, and then he explains the whole thing while he's eating shrimp cocktail, using shrimp cocktail to explain the hit and run. Is that priceless or not?
And we are raised to not play with our food, but I think that is a very good use of a shrimp cocktail. A delicious explanation of the hit and run.
Right. So here, a baseball executive who's now all grown up and knows the game now. He was taught the hit and run by Frank Robinson using a shrimp cocktail. Love it.
Coming up next on Is This a Great Game or What? Dad is going to run us down for on this date in baseball history. Also, the best number 23 and number 24. And in ode of our guest, the greatest Marlins player of all time. It's all coming up next on Is This a Great Game or What? Welcome back to Is This a Great Game or What? And Dad, we're on this date in baseball history. What do you have for June the 26th?
Right. 1970, the aforementioned Frank Robinson with the shrimp cocktail. He hit 2 grand slams in a game against the team that I loved at the time because they were my hometown team, the Washington Senators. He hit them consecutively in the same game. So in consecutive at-bats, he hit grand slams. And Frank's one of the great hitters of all time. They were the only 2 grand slams that he hit in his 6 years with the Orioles. And he hit them in consecutive at-bats in the same game. Is that amazing?
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, he ended up having more than just his time with the Orioles, but to think that he only hit 2 grand slams, he's like, I only got 2 in me, and it's within this 25-minute period.
And let's see if you could remember, Jeff, maybe one of the famous players that I've mentioned over the last few weeks, maybe even last week, who only hit 1 grand slam in his career, and Frank Robinson hit 2 in 1 game, and he did it in consecutive at-bats. I'll give you a hint.
Derek Jeter.
Yes,
only hit 1
very
grand slam, right?
good, Jeff. You are actually listening to our own podcast. Yes, Derek Jeter, who, by the way, is our second guy here. It's his birthday. Derek Jeter was born on this date in 1974. Now, let's be clear, Jeff. For me, at least, Derek Jeter is one of the 3 greatest shortstops of all time. Honus Wagner is first, and then 2 or 3 is either Cal Ripken or Derek Jeter. I really believe that those are the 3 greatest shortstops of all time. You look at the World Series rings, the stat I gave you the other day about the only 2 players in Major League history who are over 500 games, over 500 in their career for the teams that they played. Meaning when they played, their teams were 500 games over 500. It was Derek Jeter and who else?
Yogi Berra?
No. Good try.
No.
Lou Gehrig. Yes. Lou Gehrig.
Okay. Right. I knew it had to be a Yankee. Right.
Very
Lou
good.
Gehrig.
So again, Jeff, I'm a bit of a... I protect people every once in a while, but I think Derek Jeter is an underrated player, not an overrated player. Aaron Boone told me once that he said, when I played against Jeter, I thought he was really good. And then I played with him, and he was way better than I thought he was. That's how good he is when you get to see him every day. And Booney told me that when Derek Jeter would lead off, which was most of the time, he would come into the dugout, whether he hit a home run in the first bat or struck out on 3 pitches, and he would scream to everyone in the dugout, this guy's got nothing. We're going to light this guy up. We're going to kill this guy tonight. It's just his way of getting everybody ready to play. And Jeff, I never saw him loaf. I never saw him not run hard. In fact, Buck Martinez, when he was the manager of the Blue Jays, told me once, Derek Jeter is the captain of the Yankees because you can hear him run to first base every time. And Jeff, I'm sorry, but that really, really matters. I mean, O'Neill Cruz, who we mentioned earlier in the show, he got yanked from a game Tuesday night because he didn't run hard to first base on a grounded into double play. Look, that is unacceptable. And then after the game, Cruz said, well, I forgot how many outs there were. That's why I didn't run hard. Well, that's equally
also unacceptable.
You can't forget how many outs there are. And if you know how many outs there are, you got to run hard all the time. Derek Jeter always did. And Jeff, you played a lot of pickup basketball in your life. Derek Jeter, I've always made this comparison, is the guy in the pickup basketball game who's often the best player, but not always the best player. But he's always the guy that you look at on your team and say, we're going to win because he's on our team. He's going to get every dirty rebound. He's going to guard the toughest guy on the other team. And when it comes time to make a big shot, Derek Jeter's the guy that's going to do that. That's who he is. after they won Jeter's last championship, this was in 2009. My job after the game, as a TV guy after the game, I had to go write also, but was to just get an interview with Derek Jeter. And I'm chasing him around with our camera crew, and he just will not stop because he's running into the clubhouse to be a part of the celebration. But Jeff, he never even stopped in the clubhouse where there's champagne flowing everywhere. His teams are going ballistic. And he walks very carefully through the clubhouse until he gets to the other side of the clubhouse where there's a lobby. And out in the lobby is his mother and his father. And he went out there and he hugged his mom and dad first, thanked them for everything that he's given them. Fifth ring that he won, but he still felt the need to go out and thank his mom and dad first, and then he went in and celebrated with his teammates. That's who
Dad,
Derek Jeter is to me.
I don't want to be cheesy, but that story right there is what our show is all about. Listen, we can go into Quirkjians, we can go into takeaways, we talk about the numbers, but it's stories like that, Dad, that only you have in this industry, and it's what I take so much enjoyment of being on this show with you, is hearing beautiful stories like that. So that's on this date in baseball history. Let's move to from Ozzie to Oral. Dad, we're going to knock down 2 numbers today. Who is the greatest player of all time to wear number 23?
All right, this is not easy.
Michael Jordan. No, I'm sorry. Oh, right. We're baseball, right? Baseball.
Right. Don Mattingly is a close second, but I went with Ryne Sandberg first. Hall of Fame second baseman, made 10 All-Star teams, won 9 Gold Gloves, won an MVP, 282 homers, 1,061 RBIs, 344 stolen bases. And remember, Jeff, he was a Philly at one point, and they traded him to the Cubs in a deal that involved Ivan DeJesus and Larry Bowa. So when he gets to the Cubs, Jim Fry, the manager of the Cubs, said, "Son, you got to learn how to pull the ball. Let me show you how to do that." And he told him in batting practice, "I want you to intentionally pull the ball over the third base dugout, like every time. Just try to hit it over there as hard as you can over there and get in the pull mode." And that's how Ryne Sandberg learned how to pull the ball and started hitting home runs, which he hit 40 in one season, won the home run derby one year. But the best part, of course, of Ryne Sandberg was his defense. All right. He's one of the great, elegant defensive second basemen that we've ever seen. It's unbelievable how good a defender he was. So, Jeff, back in the day where you used to be allowed to kill the shortstop or kill the second baseman on the double play, Lloyd McClendon, former player, former manager, great dude, told me once, he said, "I got hit by a pitch intentionally by the Cubs, and it hurt so much, and I was so mad." He said, "All I wanted to do once I got on first base, and there was only one out," he said, "I was just praying that we had a double play situation." So he's hoping that his own teammate hits a ball so he can potentially go in and crush the shortstop or the second baseman as revenge for them hitting him on purpose. So as it goes, ground ball to the shortstop, and McClendon goes, "Oh my God," he's running to second. And he's a big man, by the way. And he goes, "Great, I'm going to kill Sandberg. I'm going to kill." He liked Ryne Sandberg, but that wasn't the point. "I'm going to kill him." And he gets like 3 feet from the bag, and he goes, "I got him. I got him. I got him." And then he said, and then Sandberg disappeared. So what he did was he caught the ball. He avoided the runner, which requires tremendous footwork and tremendous skill, and completed the double play. When we took that play out of the game, Jeff, you're not allowed to hit the shortstop or the second baseman. Now we reward terrible footwork at second base, and the artistry and the skill of, say, Ozzie Smith at shortstop and Ryne Sandberg at second is now gone because you don't have to have great footwork. But it is an art to be able to make the double play and avoid that runner who is there to crush your bones. Nobody at second base was better at that than Ryne Sandberg.
Dad, who would you say is the greatest number 24 of all time?
Okay, well, we're doing 2 this week because Willie Mays is just too easy at number 24. As I've told you, Jeff, he is the greatest player that I've ever seen. and Shohei Ohtani is the most remarkable player that I've ever seen. But Willie Mays, with the Gold Gloves and 660 home runs, never forget, Jeff, when he came in 1951, the game had never seen a combination of power, speed, and defense like Willie Mays presented. And I believe 74 years later, he is still the greatest combination of power, speed, and defense ever to play this game. And I'll never forget I wrote Willie Mays' 90th birthday story for ESPN.com, one of my favorite stories I've ever written, because I just called people and said, give me your favorite Willie Mays story. So this wasn't a story, but I said to Johnny Bench, explain Willie Mays. And he goes, he was magical. He was perfect. There was nothing that Willie Mays couldn't do on the baseball field. He is the greatest number 24 of all time. And we move on.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got to think about who we're passing up on, and I think it's the right decision. Ricky Henderson, Ken Griffey Jr., right. Miguel Cabrera. I mean, right. I'm not making an argument. I'm just saying number 24 is stacked. So for Willie Mays to be that much better than those guys, which he was, it speaks volumes to just how great of a player he was in his prime. All right, Dad, best of all, Tim. Now, yesterday we had Dan Le Batard on the podcast. We also did a live stream with Dan Le Batard and friends and had an absolute blast last night. You can see more on their YouTube channel, and we'll post it up on our website, greatgameorwhat.com. But in honor of our guests, which we've been doing a lot lately, I like that we keep the best of all Tim, picking the best player in each organization based upon kind of the guests. So we did the Orioles when we had Cal Ripken Jr. and his son on. Now we're doing the Marlins because, well, Dan Le Batard's a Marlins guy. He's a Miami guy.
Right. So for me, and again, these are all my opinions, not anybody else's. If you have a better choice than mine, we'd love to hear it. But I'm going with Giancarlo Stanton as the greatest Marlin ever. He spent 8 years there. He won an MVP there in 2017. He had 59 home runs that year. He had 267 homers for the Marlins. And in a lot of ways, he, even though they've won 2 championships without him, he put them on the map. So Giancarlo Stanton was an amazing hitter for them and an amazing athlete at one point, Jeff. Now, you see he doesn't run very well anymore. He's in his mid-30s. His body has betrayed him. But at one point in his life, he could run like the wind and was the strongest player in the game. As Greg Dobbs, one of his teammates, told me once, he said he hit the genetic jackpot with as big as he was. So I once asked Giancarlo Stanton, I said, is your dad really, really big? And he goes, no, he's like 5'11", and, he's not that big. And one of his teammates saw this guy trailing Giancarlo Stanton around quite a bit during a homestand. And he said to Giancarlo, who is that guy that's following you around? Is that just some sycophant? And Giancarlo Stanton said, no, that's my dad. So that's how little his father looks like him, because Stanton is 6'5", 245 or whatever the heck he is. So years ago, the Yankees had like a basketball team on the baseball team, Aaron Judge, 6'7", CC Sabathia. So I came up with the all basketball team out of the New York Yankees. And I read it on the air one night. And Stanton, I told him that he was the shooting guard, since he's only 6'5", the shooting guard on the Yankees team, because they had Dellin Betances and Aaron Judge and CC Sabathia, who were playing up front. And he looks at me and he was almost insulted. He goes, shooting guard? I am a better rebounder than Charles Barkley is. That's what he told me. And he was kidding, but he was trying to say that Charles Barkley, who was like 6'6" tops, is one of the great short rebounders in the history of the sport. But Giancarlo Stanton said, I was a better rebounder than Charles Barkley. I should be up front, not the shooting guard.
I will never get over that Charles Barkley, true statement, is one of the great short rebounders of all time at 6'6".
Right. Well,
we met him in a hotel in Cleveland back during the World Series, Cleveland against Chicago. And that picture, Dad, will still be one of my all-time favorite photos is you and I standing with Charles Barkley in the middle. We have never looked more out of place than we did in that picture.
What a night that was with Charles. And remember, you're working for the Cleveland radio station, and you needed just a couple of sound bites from Charles Barkley, which I still can't believe you asked him to do this in the middle of a bar, but he was more than happy to do it. And you asked him, like, what's the most number of pieces of pizza you've eaten in one sitting? What's your favorite movie or whatever? And he answered them all. So the next day, Jeff, I don't think I told you this. The next day I saw Charles Barkley, and he had never met you before in his life. And I had only met him once in my whole life. So he sees me the next day, he gives me a big hug, and he says to me, "Did Jeff use those things on the air today?" He remembered your name the next day. And I'll never forget asking Charles that night, like, he was signing every autograph and taking pictures with every knucklehead that came through that bar. And I said, "Charles, why do you do this?" And he goes, "Look, if they're going to pay you whatever it was, $14 million a year, you need to do more than play 48 minutes a game. You need to do more for the people around you." I never forgot that. And I think it was a very cool thing for him to look at. If you're going to be famous and you're going to be great, you should give back to people once in a while.
I think we need to get Charles Barkley as a guest. You and I have discussed that we need to get him on. So can you start working on that for me, Dad?
All right, Jeff, you've gotten 2 guests in 2 years on this show, and now you're yelling at me to try to get Charles Barkley on the show? Jeff, it's a joke. I will work on getting Charles Barkley on the show because I would love to talk to him about baseball. I will have to talk about basketball because I love basketball also. All right, I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
All right, Dad, I am a seam head today. Tell us a little bit about who we're bringing in, Steve Blomberg.
Right. So Steve is a friend of mine, and I asked him because he's a lunatic baseball fan, and there's so many of them out there. So Steve just goes through, he told me he had about 5 different ways he could have described, maybe more, of why he is a seam head. This is what he chose.
Hi, Tim and Jeff. This is Steve from Maryland, and I am a proud seamhead. There are so many reasons I love baseball, but my number one is the numbers. The numbers in baseball mean more than they do in any other sport. The numbers sometimes create situations that question, how did this happen? For example, one of my favorite statistics is I try to understand how Bob Gibson lost 9 games in 1968 with a 1.12 ERA. I wonder how Bob Horner or Eugenio Suarez can hit 4 home runs in a game where their team has lost. I wonder how we went from ERA, wins, strikeouts in pitching, RBIs, home runs, and batting average in baseball, and now we're looking at WAR, batting average, balls in play, FIP. All those numbers have meanings, and most importantly about baseball compared to everybody else, the numbers 100 years ago have meaning today, and the numbers we have today are great ways to compare different eras of the game. No other sport can come close. I love baseball, and I love being a seam head.
Dad, it's perfect. I mean, we love getting these I am a seam head submissions. You can email me, jeff@greatgamerwhat.com, in order to submit your voice memo today.
Right. And as far as Bob Gibson goes, you're right. Steve's right. He lost 9 games in 1968, the year of the pitcher, with a 1.12 ERA. Jeff, he started 34 games that season, and he completed 28 of them. Think about that for a second. And in these 6 games that he came out of, so he didn't pitch a complete game, he was always taken out for a pinch hitter in the middle of an inning. So not once that year did the manager, Red Chandies, come to the mound and take the ball from him out in the middle of an inning. There were times they had to hit for him because we're behind. It's the bottom of the 8th or whatever, even though Bob Gibson was a great hitting pitcher. But think about that for a second. 34 starts, and not once did the manager come out and take you out of the game.
Well, Dad, that wraps up today's show. Next week, we're going to be looking down 4th of July week, which is so exciting because Friday will be the 4th of July, a week from tomorrow, which is really exciting.
Right. And we will have Ron Darling, former Met, played on the 86 championship Mets, and he was involved in the July 4th, 1985 game, maybe the craziest game in Major League history. And he's going to tell us all about that ridiculous 19-inning game that had a million different layers to it.
Well, that's what's coming up next week here on Is This a Great Game or What? Thank you so much for listening. And as always, thank you for being a part of our family.